I suck at jiu-jitsu. How do I suck less at jiu-jitsu?
I guess to suck less.
The diabolical leader of the headlock squad.
All right, Keenan Cornelius, how are you doing today?
Doing fantastic. A little winded after my training session, but I've got the endorphin high, so I'm ready to talk.
That's the best, that's the best mat chat time. You sit around with the boys. That's one of the most beautiful parts of jiu-jitsu is that feeling of beatdown and then euphoria that you get with it.
I think that's the addiction that people get. They get addicted to that because it's there's not a lot of forms of exercise where you can really push yourself hard while like feeling psychologically happy about it, Like if you're running, it's gruesome. If you're going to run for an hour, it's pretty tough on you, like mentally to like keep going, to like really enjoy it. Those endorphin chemicals, count on them. But jiu-jitsu, I always say jiu-jitsu's like, it reminds me of when you're playing tag as a kid and like your lungs are burning, but you can keep running even though you're in excruciating pain because the fun triumphs the pain. That's how I feel.
That is, I think that's dead accurate because those are, if we went running, I could make it about 0.2 miles, but when you have somebody else pushing you, you have somebody else that just wants to get to your neck so bad. Not only do you fight hard, but there's a fun in trying to prevent that from happening.
Yeah, I think it's because it's a game. Right? If you're running, you can make it a game, kind of, but like the little voice that tells you can stop gets very loud very quickly for me, at least when I'm running. But in jiu-jitsu, there's no voices. You have to just be locked in on the task, and it's kind of like meditative. That's why I'm still doing it. The training for me is what was fun, more than like competition and all that.
I've heard you say that so many times that I know that is true.
I should stop saying it then.
No, it's honestly, people don't know. Many people understand that. I remember I made a Facebook post when I was a blue belt about something like that. Like I'd lost at a tournament. I'm like, man, but the fun part is just the hard training with everybody, and getting to push it with a team. And somebody commented and was like, no, that's the worst part. The best part is when you win the tournament. And I'm like, yeah, I don't know. It's just something about the mindset that you go into that, man, I don't care that I'm going to get broken here. I don't care that I'm going to lose. I'm going to just keep pushing. I'm going to keep fighting. And then eventually you start to realize that everyone's experiencing that or to some degree experiencing that. And, you're able to also outpace and outwork. And I don't know, there's something really fun to it.
Yeah, I always felt like competition was kind of like, you have to do it to see if what you're doing in the gym actually works.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's not, it's really difficult to go into the gym and have everyone be like, wait, are we all like trying hard today? Are we like going to try and beat each other today?
Yeah.
Or are you like kind of sore and you're like kind of tired and you like were up all night with your kid or something? So it's hard to like get an equal playing field where everyone agrees to show up on a day and try their hardest. So it's like the best, most honest feedback is competition, but that doesn't mean it's the most fun. In fact, honest feedback hurts the most, right? So like, when you're forced to go and like reconcile your weaknesses in competition, it's like it really beats you down. But you have to be comfortable with that sort of like destruction and rebuilding of your game. That's always why I did it. It's like, what I'm even practicing gonna work? Like, how effective is it on the day where it's like a guy is really going to be there to try and beat me and I'm there to try and beat him? But I always had a lot of like negative emotion around competition, honestly. And then when it's over, it's like a relief more than like an like excitement or like happiness that I won. It's like, oh, I'm glad that's over with. Let's go back home. That was my view, at least. Did you compete much? I didn't know much about your jiu-jitsu career.
I did. I kind of did the IBJJF circuit from blue belt to black belt. I did black belt adult for 4.5 years. I haven't competed in about a year now, or at least at IBJJF. And so, or at least at IBJJF adult, I've done a few masters things. I just turned 30. But yes, I even recognize it as this part of preparation for a tournament. I always have this thought 2 days, 1 day, right before the tournament. I hate doing this. Why do I do this? This is the stupidest thing that I do. I could do every other part of jujitsu more if I wasn't doing this right now. And then I compete, and then I'm like, okay, I'll sign up for the next one.
It really is excruciating to compete. It's like it's so painful. But for me, it was like I had to do it because I was all in, no other skill set, no school. The way that I survived and continued my career is by going and trying to make a name for myself. And so I'm one of the few people where jiu-jitsu really became my job, and that makes it not as fun either. And
Mhm.
like I feel bad saying that because a lot of people, when I talk to people, they're like, "Why don't you compete anymore? Like, you should go compete." Like, that's pretty much what everyone says. You should go back and compete. And I'm like, you have no idea how painful competition can be when it's like your livelihood is on the line. Also, it's one thing if you're going and you're just testing yourself, but it's like if that's your rent or that's your paycheck basically. In jiu-jitsu, it's like you do all the work before your paycheck. You do like 3 months of work, and then you work for like 20 minutes. Like your actual job is 20 minutes, and then it's like
Mhm.
3 months of preparation to go do your actual job. It's a tough lifestyle. I'm super happy to have a gym now. Like you mentioned, that mat chat, like after class mat chat in Northern Rush is like some of the most fun. I was there at PJ's, and he's a gym owner, and Ian is opening a gym, and then Keenan was talking about how he wants to open a gym. So it's like this logical conclusion of a jiu-jitsu career is to open your gym. So that's kind of like the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow of competition is you have like this huge well of experience that you get to open a gym, and that's been so fun. Like opening a gym. Do you have a gym, or do you
Yeah,
still train at someone else's gym?
yeah, I have two. I
So you have,
actually um I recognize exactly what you're saying. I recognize that really young because my dad he owned some personal training gyms. And so for me, it was really interesting to go like, okay, if I'm going to make money in the long game, all the guys that I know that are doing this, even the best competitors, made money from having schools. They would teach seminars and stuff, but that really wasn't the the pinnacle for most guys. The guys that were making good money just had a really good amount of students. And so I started my first school at 21. And so while I was competing, I totally recognize when you say that people think you're like being a baby or something, when you say like, yeah, it's when jujitsu competition plus teaching plus all these things are your job, competition really is almost the selfish part anyway. It's not the like, okay, you can choose to train really hard at your gym, focus all the training on you, and make sure that you're really good at jujitsu, make sure you can compete and win, or you can do that with a bunch of students. It's very hard, if possible, to do it both ways and say, this is going to very strongly benefit me, this training, or it's going to strongly benefit all you kind of new guys. And so, yeah, I get that kind of problem, I guess you would say, with trying to do all those things, and for you especially, you created content for so long, and the reason people loved your content so much was how well you were doing in competition. And so I'm sure that the decision of like, well, why would I go compete right now? Do you ever debate that in your head? Do you ever think about coming back from and going to compete again?
yeah, I think anyone who has like a combat career where it's very alluring to be like a professional athlete, right? There's a sort of perception that it's like this really there's like I guess you could say it's like romanticized to a degree. Like there's like supposedly fame and all these benefits of like being well known in sports niche, I would say. Um, but yeah, it's like a lot of it is surface level because sure, like you're well known in not in a grocery store. And that's actually a fantastic part of it. You get to experience a little bit of what it's like to be well known in something, but it doesn't like seep into your non jiu-jitsu life that much. And when it does, it's like a nice surprise. It's like, oh, you're a jiu-jitsu guy. Like you meet someone in an airport or something. But you're exactly right. A lot of people don't realize that it's kind of hard to deal with when you said it exactly as it is, which is people enjoyed my content because I had results. So like what I was saying had so much validity because I would go and do it live. When that is taken away, your authority also gets taken away. So by not competing, I'm actually taking a shot to my own authority. So when I come up with a new move now, which I have an awesome move I haven't posted, I think probably the craziest move I've ever conceived, I came up with like a week ago. It's a no-gi move. And when I post it, people are going to be like, yeah, whatever. Like, that doesn't work because I haven't done it in competition. And that was like pretty much my biggest selling point when I was doing a lot of content and selling instructionals. And you could see in my analytics, like my website traffic would spike, my YouTube traffic would spike, and it would spike the most on a gold medal. If I got a silver, it wouldn't spike as much. If you don't place, it wouldn't spike as much. So it's like your competition results are the driving factor of everything else, like all of the opportunities, the instructional. And it's like, hey, you can compete all the time, and if you promote it, you're gonna do okay. But like even when I was like, there was a point I think I was the highest earning jiu-jitsu competitor at the time. But even that is like not as much as you can make only in a few gyms. Like you said, you have 2 gyms, and you started so early. I wish I had opened a gym at 21. There was a guy named Louis Choi who was an entrepreneur that I knew when I was 21, and he told me to start a gym. And I was like, yeah, whatever, dude. No way. That's like way too much responsibility. That's way too much. I just want to compete and train and not worry about anything. But in hindsight, I wish I had done what you had done. I think I could have competed just as well, maybe better. And I would have matured a lot faster with having that responsibility. I would have like expanded my skill set and not left myself with so much risk of like being so over specialized in like choking people and not like any other skills whatsoever, which was kind of the deciding factor for me to stop competing. It's like, I need other skill sets. If I have children now, I started a family, and it's like, it's not really responsible to pro wrestling, that's it. That's all you do. You're pro grappling. So how do you manage 2 gyms? I don't even have 2 gyms. I have 1 gym. And one of my biggest fears and like uncertainties is how to go from 1 to 2. That's like 100% increase in responsibility, staff, risk, leases, financial accountability. Like, how did you transition? Is it because you had so much experience growing up with your dad that it was just like no big deal for you? Or no, was there a lot of struggle there?
Said at first it was definitely hard. COVID almost closed that one. COVID really didn't. My gym, we kind of shut the doors, but everyone kept training. But that one was just, it was so new at the time. We lost so many students. So we almost lost it during COVID, but still I would even say it's been a really good practice in learning how to be a business owner that has to be more hands-off, because I just can't be in both places. And so it's been a lot of practice. But then what really made the change for both gyms was I have just been the type of person to kind of do everything, like for the gym, for all the stuff that I do. And when I had my wife start helping with be the general manager, and she kind of took over managing both gyms and just kind of really having more direction. It really a lot of my strengths are her weaknesses and vice versa. And so her just being on to keep me accountable on certain things, to fix certain things, that really was the big change that helped both gyms. But I would say at first, splitting did make it harder.
Yeah. And what's your background? Did you go to college, or what's your skill set outside of grappling?
Jiu-jitsu, man.
If any.
I started.
That's it.
Yeah, I started I have I I have like I think probably a similar story to you with jujitsu origin and all those kind of things. But I started as at 8 years old in my dad's garage learning from Gracie jujitsu VHS tapes. My dad was just always interested in martial arts and saw UFC and he was in. And so we did that for quite a while, but it was still so rudimentary. It really wasn't jujitsu. It wasn't until Matt Hughes opened a jujitsu school in my city. And like I said, we're in the middle of nowhere, but Matt Hughes is from the middle of nowhere, and he opened a school there or opened an MMA school, and it was really big at the time. They hired a jiu-jitsu coach, and I started at 14, and I've been with that same coach, however long, 16 years. And just through that time, I've just tried to learn how I was going to make it as a jiu-jitsu guy because, just fell in love with it.
Well, you definitely made the right decision earlier than most people, because one of my frustrations at pro training camps is I would look around and people like the other athletes wouldn't be doing anything to like secure a financial future. They kind of all were just on the big gamble of like becoming world champion and then everything just falling into their lap. And like you just look at the stats, like in any bracket, only one guy can do that.
Mm-hmm.
You can have 100 people in the division, only one guy is going to get that top spot. So like it's great to be confident in yourself, but you also have to have the only backup plan that exists in jiu-jitsu, which is owning a gym. And we're so fortunate that actually is an advantage to your competitive life, because it's like you're all in, you have no way out, but you also have this like fantastic foundation to fall back on if you don't go all the way to the finish line. So now a lot of my training partners that I trained with 10 years ago are like, what do I do now? They're kind of like having to scramble to figure out how to open a gym a little bit later. And as you know, with business, it takes 10 years. Well, you said you started at 14 working in a gym. Is that what you said? And you're 30 now?
I started training at 14, but
okay.
Yeah, I probably teaching and getting to do that at 17.
Yeah, so you've been at this for 13, 14 years, actually, like in the business of gyms. And experience is everything. Like you're not going to learn that in an MBA program at any college. Like it's really just about hands-on work. So what would you say to because there's a lot of older people who get into jiu-jitsu late in their life and they wish they could have started when we started. That's like something you've probably heard a lot, right?
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of them are trying to get out of their corporate grind and they want to just do what they love, and they see an opportunity where it's like, maybe I can open a gym. Do you think they need to be like exceptionally skilled at jiu-jitsu? And do they need all of that experience? Or do you think people can be trained and taught to run an academy? Like, could you impart your knowledge? Say you never had that fantastic, loyal guy who was helping you, kind of like almost like doing charity at first just to help out with his kids program. If someone came to you from your gym and was like, hey, I want to open a third gym with you. And maybe they're kind of new, but they're pretty good and they like to teach. How would you approach setting them up in your third academy?
Oh gosh. I don't know. I don't like how you keep asking me questions. But that is a really good question. You should start a podcasting network.
Yeah.
But man, so it's hard to answer completely truthfully because I'm actually having these conversations right now with students, and it's a big decision because I've always been of this mindset that I was sharpening business skills to do business in a different area, that wasn't owning jiu-jitsu schools. But in that time, we've really just been trying to figure out the pieces that you actually need to have a jiu-jitsu school that is what we would consider successful, and I think that.
And what sorry to interrupt, what is your metric for success?
Man, I really think our first thing is not losing money. It's like
That's a good start.
that's
Sure.
a simple, and people don't think about that in jiu-jitsu businesses. All, you buy a website that costs a certain amount of money and you have to pay monthly. And literally by not bringing in any money, you're going to lose that business. And people don't think about that a lot, and they do that so much. And so break even is like my first metric, because with the jiu-jitsu school, we really are doing it for the love of it. And so if my coach is just starting to get paid a little bit, then I think he would be super excited to start, right? As we're starting. But as he gets paid more, as we start to make money off of it, I really think that like the simple metrics of like a jiu-jitsu school, because you always have to get your pricing right for your area. I'm sure your pricing is, because your rent in San Diego is significantly different than the rent in Granite City, Illinois. And
Can you give me an example? Like, what is the cost per square foot for like a lease there?
okay, so I own my building. My building
Crush.
is you're gonna be, I'll tell you the numbers because they're public record, but you're gonna be shook by the pricing out here. And I'm curious to hear what yours guys' is. So the studio that I'm in is 400 square feet, and it's a separate building, and it just came as basically part of it. We were just trying to get the main building, and eventually it turned into a studio. But so that's 400 square feet, and then I think we have 3,800 square feet total in our building, and then it's like, I don't know, like 2,500 mat space, something like that, 2,200, 2,300, I don't know, something like that. But the cost of the building was $130,000. In the
Wow,
cost
great price.
in the cost of the upgrades to make the building ready to run was like $6,000.
All right, I'm gonna guess your student member head count based off your mat space size. Tell me if I'm close.
Okay.
You said 2,300 square feet. I'm guessing your average class attendance is 23 people, and your total membership maybe higher. Let's say 20. Let's say 29 people average class attendance on like Monday at 6 p.m. And total head count 247.
Okay, total head count, you might have actually, like, I don't know the exact number, but you might be,
You got to know these numbers, bro.
you would have a better and accurate number than I did. We literally just, so actually we were actually at 300 on our list, and then we went through and we deleted people that hadn't been paying. And so we were fake at 300. And so I don't know exactly how many of the people that haven't been paying went back yet, but you were probably, I would say 250 to 270 is where we're at probably right now. But we were probably more. So Monday, I just taught Monday, 6 p.m. We had like 40 people.
And if this is like too business, or I love talking about business, if you wanted to talk more about like pure jiu-jitsu stuff, I'm fine with that. You can just cut this if it's like we're touching on sensitive topics. But I love talking to jiu-jitsu gym owners, especially people who like have been doing it and have multiple gyms, because that's where I want to be one day.
Brother, I appreciate the conversation. We can talk about whatever you want. I do feel underqualified still to, be given a ton of advice on it, but I do think that I guess on my part of it is like, I really don't think it's a mistake to start your jiu-jitsu school before you are amazing at jiu-jitsu, before you're the best grappler ever. And yeah, if I was going to do it, and like that, back to that original question,
it's like a totally unnecessary skill. You don't actually have to be good at jiu-jitsu to operate a jiu-jitsu academy.
You don't. And at this point, my wife completely operates the academy in a sense that she hires coaches, she does pay, she does everything. I teach jiu-jitsu.
Because I actually teach academy that much. I'm basically I'm a substitute. That's how I view my role, is like as a substitute teacher. But I think there's actually a risk involved of being too good at jiu-jitsu when you open your gym. because you're only one person, and if you're the best grappler in your academy and you're always teaching the classes, if for any reason you can't be there, the expectations have been set where it's like you're the guy, and if you don't show up, then everyone's like let down, and it's like, this sucks now, we hate it here, the guy's not even here. But for me, I was like, actually I did start teaching. The first 2 years I taught most of the classes, but as I slowly like phased out, we got way better results actually. So like I was actually holding my own gym back by teaching somehow. And like the intuition is the opposite. You'd think that like, no, Keenan, you got to teach all the time. You're the guy who's like bringing people through the door. But when I removed myself from that and I put in a dedicated teacher who's like as focused as I am on, or was, on competition and technique, he's as focused on teaching. And that focus and enthusiasm for teaching is more beneficial for the students than me, who's like kind of teaching because it's like, yeah, I have the skill set, I know how to do it, but I'm not super enthusiastic about teaching. So maybe for you in the future, like there will be a point where it's like you're not teaching as much anymore. If you open your third gym, you may have to start directing like broader strategy that's like abstract to multiple locations, rather than like what you'll have to start like teaching your teachers how to teach your curriculum.
This episode is brought to you by BJJ Mental Models Premium. If you are looking for a deep dive with one of the highest level coaches in something that they are best at, maybe for example, one of the best competitors in the world talking to you about mindset, or maybe one of the best coaches in the world talking to you about running a jiu-jitsu school, then look no further than the premium podcasts that accompany BJJ Mental Models Premium. You also get on their Discord when you sign up, and you also can sign up for half price with promo code JOSH when you sign up at checkout. There's a link in the description. There's so much more that you get when you sign up for BJJ Mental Models Premium. But if you use promo code JOSH, you get half off your first month. Let's get back to the episode. Just with travel and other things, it's hard to consistently, be at all the gyms and do all those things. So I am experiencing exactly that. What are you noticing when it comes to, because like for you have a specific way that you look at jiu-jitsu and that you believe that jiu-jitsu should be done. And so, or is best performed, I guess, especially for competition. And so how do you impart that in guys that you are, bringing on as coaches?
That's a great question. So first of all, I don't really view it like everyone needs to learn my techniques and like how I like to do the techniques. I would rather impart like a cultural philosophy of like making sure that the coaches are not aggregating like a little cult around them. That's the biggest problem I see, is when you bring people in and they get all of this authority with a large group of people, it tends to go to their head. So I'm much more focused on trying to like beat the drum on like culture and like, we're here to serve. You're not like some exceptional person just because you have a black belt. A lot of these people are smarter than you. A lot of them make more money than you. A lot of them are like more successful in their fields. And it's not your job to be like imparting wisdom outside of your jiu-jitsu technique. So I really focus on that. And even with that, it's like, people, maybe a coach will like not promote someone because they have a personal problem with that person. Like they just don't like that guy because they like said something to them. They feel slighted or like they talk back to them. But it's like, okay,
they ask about a belt promotion.
Yes, that's a huge one. Why is that so offensive? Like they're here, they expect to see some sort of progress mark, like some checkpoint that like says that they're actually progressing. You can't expect people to pay you money each month and like you don't give them any feedback on their results. Like, how am I doing? Hello, coach, how am I doing? The coaches will always kind of be put all their focus to like a very small number of people that they really like, but that's not their job. Your job is not to like build a little cohort of like a clique that you like and they're the guys who like you vibe with the most and you just help them. Your job is to actually help the weakest link. You're supposed to help the person who struggles. The natural athletes, they don't need your help. They'll be fine. Like, stop giving them all of the attention. They can learn off YouTube. It's the struggling white belt who's like not having any success and is like getting beat up, and it's like maybe they took an elbow to the eye and they're emotionally beat down. Like, that's what I struggle with the most in coaches, is trying to get them to like embody that and be like a real like shepherd of the people, rather than kind of like teach because they enjoy it. And the coaching job really attracts people who want to just teach because they enjoy it, because it's so fun. Like, the opportunity to be able to like make money doing what you love is super attractive opportunity. But you also have to like understand that there's the job aspect, which is what I just described, and then there's the fun aspect, which is like you get to do a little bit of. But what I'm seeing is like, if you're going to maintain quality of instruction, you need really high quality instructors, and that's actually super rare. So it's almost like if I were to open more gyms and try and maintain a quality level that I would want, I would actually have to build those people. Like, they have to start at my gym and work all the way up. And it's like they're going to have a lot of skills and physical traits that let them even reach that point, because it's hard to become very talented and knowledgeable if you don't have a lot of like the pre-existing conditions that are prerequisites for that role. So I still don't really have someone like that. Like, I don't have someone in my gym where I'm really thinking like, yeah, that's the next head coach at another academy. So that's actually a big constraint for me, and like long-term vision of like wanting to open multiple schools and kind of propagate jiu-jitsu. Because like my mission statement is I want to expose people to the benefits of jiu-jitsu, because there's so many psychologically. I'm going to start stuttering because I used all my energy at jiu-jitsu class. I'll try and keep it together, but like all the brain juices are gone. What was I saying? Oh yeah, propagating the benefits of jiu-jitsu. That's kind of my mission. So I want to open a lot of academies. I want to give people an alternate choice from the Brazilian style of teaching. So there's like a fair balance of like what you're looking for. If you want that traditional sensei student relationship, go to the Brazilian jiu-jitsu gyms. If you want more of like a country club hangout where it's like the coaches are there to serve you and help you achieve your goals, and you don't really have to like prostrate yourself before them and follow all the little the like, you know, the oses and the shibboleths of tying your belt and all these different things. That's what we offer. So I want to put that in more places. And I think it's like naturally becoming a thing as like, you know, American. Are you Brazilian?
Nah, man,
okay. You're
I'm,
not Brazilian.
yeah, I am, I'm half Filipino, and
Okay.
so the other half white.
Are your parents immigrants, or were they born in America as well?
My mom moved here when she was 9.
Okay.
Mhm.
And so you guys understand the American dream, right? And it's like sometimes when you have the Brazilian crew straight from Brazil to here, they don't quite get it yet. But like having people who now that jiu-jitsu is maturing, and there's literally a generation of American black belts that are coming online and starting their gyms just like you are and like I am. I think we're seeing a lot more of that like alternate culture, which I'm super happy about. I think that's what's going to spread jiu-jitsu, because I feel like jiu-jitsu was kind of stagnant for a long time. It's like no one could figure out like, is it the rules? Is it the gi? Is it like, do we need to allow more vicious submissions to get people to pay attention to this? Like, is it the MMA thread? Like, how do we get people into this? I really think it's the culture of the gyms is what's going to help us break through into like the mainstream of people training this like it's yoga or like it's any other, you know, physical activity. I wish I could know like how many people even train in America. No one knows.
No one knows.
We don't know how many gyms there are. We don't know how many people are training. The only thing you can know is like tournament signups, and tournaments and competition is like, at least at my academy, it's like maybe 5% of the total member base even cares, probably less. So it's like, that's not a super good watermark either. But yeah, that's where I'm at. So what membership software do you use, if any?
I use Kicksite. They have full disclosure, they sponsor me, but I've used them way before that. I've used them for like 7 years. And I really like them because they run the website too. And so I'm able to use that, like I'm able to, you know, have a website that puts people directly into my new student, new student funnels and stuff. And so and Yeah, I know the people. They're from Kansas, so they're close. And so yeah, it's just always really enjoyed them. Who do you use?
So we started using Mind Body, and I was extremely fortunate to meet a guy who is now going to be a like co-founder, who's like super high level software architect. Like there's software engineers and then there's software architects. These are the guys that can like see the matrix. They're like level. So I've got a guy who's like loves jujitsu, moved here, and I first met him because I walked into my gym and we had a timer app on my TV, and I was like, "Who made this? Why do I have an American Jiu-Jitsu timer app?" And his name's Paulo. He was like, "Oh yeah, I made that over the weekend." I was like, "Are you fucking kidding me?" Pardon my language. I was like, "You just made this app? You can just make apps?" He was like, "Yeah." I was like, "You're in. Let's do this." And so we've actually started making our own internal membership tool.
That's
So
awesome.
we actually have our own thing, because when I looked at Kicksite and I looked at, I mean, not to your sponsor, I'm sure they do a great job, but like um, a lot of these membership platforms, I felt like they weren't really tracking and like doing what I wanted them to do. Like I really want stats on attendance.
Yeah.
I want to know that my coaches are promoting people. I want to know, like, I want my students to know where they're at on a time, like a timeline of their goals, and I want them to see their own progress. And like, I couldn't even get people's pictures on their check-in profile with a lot of these membership softwares. Like, how did the coaches even know their names? Like, I have a pretty big academy. I don't know like the biggest jiu-jitsu academies, but we're pushing 600 members across adults and kids. And when you have an 80 person class and one coach, they can't know who everyone is. They can't recognize the faces. There's like crops of white belts coming in, crops of white belts leaving. Like, you can't memorize everyone. So it was a huge friction on like the experience for the new members, when the coach doesn't really ever even learn their name. And if they don't learn their name and face, then they're going to get forgotten in the scheme of promotions. And it's like, how was the coach even keeping track of who's ready? It was basically just in their own intuition, which was like biased towards the people they like. So then there's like a whole underclass of people who are ignored. So that's what our internal tool allowed. That's what we started working on first, and we kept like all of the payments and all of that stuff with like Mind Body and the others. That's what they do well, is like, you can swipe a card and get a
Hmm.
payment. That's like kind of the main thing. And my other co-founder is actually a website professional, so he actually is like an expert in funnels and marketing and tying things together from like the website to our sales process and stuff. So I had the luxury of having like like people way smarter than me working on these two ends of the system. So I feel I'm in a super good spot to like be someone who actually develops something like this. But it's not something I'm planning to like launch and like compete with Kickside or anything. It's just like for Legion gyms. It's basically going to be our thing that hopefully separates our quality from other gyms who maybe don't have that kind of functionality. But the coach being able to open the app and like see everyone's face in that class right now, see when they were last promoted, see notes from other coaches about what their goals were, and trying to like integrate that into like the coach's behavior of how they like have touch points with the different students. That's the kind of stuff I focus on now, is like, how do I make this system super smooth and frictionless for people who are trying to get into jiu-jitsu? Because as you know, it's the white belts that fall off the fastest. You
Hmm.
get them in and they're out in 3 months or whatever the time frame is. So I've really been focused on like, how do you present jujitsu to noobs who, like, if their first like finger, like they lose a skin on their finger from grabbing a gi on their first day, and it's like they're like, I'm out, this was too much for me. Like, how do you, those are the little friction points that stop people from becoming addicted to jiu-jitsu and getting all the benefits, is like the first little bits of pain.
Hmm.
Like, you're getting rolled up on the mat and it's so painful that they're just like, I can't handle this, I'm out. And if
Hmm.
they have too hard of a class, they're too sore, they don't come back. If they have too rough of an experience, they get an injury and they're out. So what me and my team have been doing is just like really trying to make I use the analogy of an incredibly soft and smooth on ramp without sacrificing their ability to do the live sparring. Because like Gracie Baja and the other gyms, they like don't let people spar for 6 months, which maybe is the right strategy. But I would rather like try and get them to get to that point faster and like get to the real sparring faster, while trying to like minimize injuries and stuff. So that's what I've been working on.
And it's the battle of, you don't want to water down jujitsu. You don't want to make it too soft at a point, in the beginning, because then you're like, well, this is disingenuous, because there's going to be a point that, if you do this for long enough, you're going to get a blue belt and you're going to roll with somebody who's also a blue belt. And it's, it won't be the same level of, it won't be the same thing. But
Yeah.
there's also, like you said, there's pain points of like, you want jujitsu to be that first experience matters to so many people. So many people, when I ask them like when they started jujitsu, they will talk about the first night and what that experience was. And so that experience does matter so much. This episode is brought to you by Imposed Will and their huge collaboration with the I Suck at Jiu-Jitsu show. Whether you train BJJ, GJJ, AJJ, or even just JJ, you probably suck at it. And for a lot of people, they want to keep that in the closet. They want to hide that fact. But for you and I, we're cool with letting people know that we suck at jiu-jitsu. And one of the best ways to let people know that you suck at jiu-jitsu is to get on the Imposed Will I Suck at Jiu-Jitsu show collaboration. Right now, not only do we have no-gi sets, not only do we have really, really cool over-the-top custom gis, but this year, we added performance t-shirts. So now you can go out about your day and let people know that you suck at jiu-jitsu without, of course, walking around in a rash guard like a serial killer. But all that being said, there is only 2 weeks left for this pre-sale. And then once the pre-sale is done, there is no way to let people know that you suck at jiu-jitsu. And currently with our no-gi sets, we have a red, white, and blue and a no-gi camo kit, both of which are totally amazing. We figured with 4th of July quickly approaching that you guys would want to jump in on this offer. Only 2 weeks left. Be sure to tell your wife, hey, this is what I want for Christmas. This is the only thing. Get me the entire catalog. I want it all, honey. If you want me to be happy, I need to let my friends know that I suck at jiu-jitsu. And so that's all I have for you. Let's get back to this very shocking interview that we're in the middle of. You've used the term a few times, and so I had a few questions about it, but is there a visual difference between American and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu?
Do you mean from the technical aspect or the cultural?
I guess, how would somebody recognize the difference between, and it can be technical, it can be cultural, just somebody that is getting into the jiu-jitsu space, somebody new, how would they recognize the difference? Or is there a way to recognize the difference for them?
Yeah, and it's a great question. And it's something that I've been trying to articulate because it is a challenging articulation, because it's like, hey, it just looks like two people like rolling around in pajamas. I would say the primary difference is the experience in my academy. And there are other American Jiu-Jitsu gyms that don't adopt these values, but they say they're American Jiu-Jitsu from like a national pride point of view. And like maybe their, technical lineage is like more American based, which is like a valid thread also. But for my academy and like offering American Jiu-Jitsu, it's very focused on the customer as the central point of the entire program. So like if someone goes to a Brazilian academy, I can tell them exactly what they're going to experience. They're going to be, they may get like a little introductory one-on-one that will last like 15 minutes, or they'll get put into a white belt only class where the skill discrepancy is still so vast, because the skill discrepancy at white belt is greater than the skill discrepancy between a purple and a black belt. So like the day one white belt and the 9-month white belt, they may as well be different animals. It may as well be a tiger versus a mouse, you know? So the because the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu academies are much more focused on the back end of the promotional hierarchy. They're focused on the black belts, the purple belts, the brown belts, and the blue belts. That's like kind of their focus and care. Whereas at my academy, our focus is inverted. We're focused on the beginners, and we're trying to make their experience, like I said, a smooth on ramp. So what happens in our region is people will gym shop because there's so many academies here. So they go try different places. They do trial classes at these other places. It's like a trial class. They get thrown into the environment I just described. Either it's with other upper belts, or it's with other white belts where the skill discrepancy is so vast that they can't even participate. They don't even know what's going on, and they don't get a proper contextual frame of what we're even doing here. So a lot of people's jiu-jitsu journeys stop right there because they didn't get proper attention and like onboarding. So that's the first thing that someone would notice. Hopefully I would want other American jiu-jitsu gyms to kind of adopt this, because it's just capitalism. It's just like we're trying to provide value to the clients rather than trying to kind of like just take what we've got and keep our little traditional mindset. So from like an obvious day one first impressions, that's what I think people will notice is just our care and structure of how we integrate white belts into jiu-jitsu. Then the secondary things that you would notice is like we don't have the little secret handshakes at every step of the way. It's like, oh, and every gym is different. So whether you go to one Brazilian academy or another Brazilian academy, it's like you may or may not have to follow these little rules, which is like bowing onto the mats, which I think is a good practice. You know, that's like the bowing onto the mat is like one of the ancient threads from the Japanese judo history. Is like you bow, it shows respect. So like we encourage people to do that, but it's not mandatory. Turning away to tie your belt is like another little one. Not asking higher belts to roll. Not going for leg locks on upper belts is one that's like super common. It's like if leg locks are not legal in your division, you cannot go for leg locks on upper belts, which we don't do that. Maybe, and some people may disagree with that, but it's like, yes, go for leg locks on the upper belts. If an upper belt can't effectively defend a lower belt's leg lock, that's the upper belt's problem, not your problem. That's how I view that. So, but we remove a lot of those traditional aspects that maybe are not obvious when you look at BJJ versus AJJ as like a name. But when you get into the reality of the environment, the discrepancies become much more clear. And so if you're late, you will be punished in a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu academy most of the time. That's like a normal thing to do, right? Like you're late, go do push-ups. Another one that's incredibly normalized and maybe is different, but like when I was coming up through the ranks and training everywhere, you had to ask your instructor if you could go to the bathroom. Did you experience this?
I've never experienced it, but I have had visiting people, or I've gone to seminars, and I've taught at seminars where they do this, and I make fun of everything. It's just what I do. It's like, it's not a big deal. It's just what you're supposed to do. So like somebody comes up to me, is like, "Hey, professor, can I use the bathroom?" I'm like, "That's not my name, but I guess. What do you wait? Do you need to ask my permission?" And they're like, "Oh yeah, I do." And yeah, that was shocking.
So that's a normal thing in a lot of academies. I don't know if that came from Brazil or where that came from, but it's like very patronizing. It's weird. Like you don't need another adult's permission to leave to go to the bathroom. And the argument I've heard against for that one is like, well, what if there's something wrong? What if they're leaving the mat and I don't know, and they have like a concussion and they like leave and they never come back and no one knows, and now they're dead. Like, okay, that's a highly unlikely scenario. I don't think you have to worry about that. I really think it's like a weird power struggle. It's like a subconscious power thing that has adapted in certain areas where it's like, these mats are my domain. Anyone entering or leaving must ask my permission as the lead, as the king of this area. So I just think that's super stupid. And there's like, I could just go on, and there's a million little, I learned the word for it recently. It's called a shibboleth. It means like a pattern of behavior that allows you to be recognized by a group or tribe as an in-group participant. So the way you slap hands, what you say, like saying us, or like, the certain way that you do the clap at the end of the technique, these are all like performative traditions that let your social group be aware that the secret handshakes.
Mm-hmm.
And this is like derivative from a lot of religion. But jiu-jitsu is not a religion. It could be, and maybe it should be for tax reasons. I would like to start it as a religion.
Yeah.
But I think because it's not religious, but it has religious components, such as these shibboleths, it has a tendency to digress into a cult quickly. And the spectrum of cult is big, from like the cult leader, sleeping with everyone's wives, to like not a big deal. And it's like not really a cult, but it's like a cult of personality, and the coach is just like kind of like this figurehead that people all go to as almost like their confidant or like priestly guide.
But it always eventually turns into the coach sleeping with everybody's wives.
It's pretty, yeah, it seems it's inevitable. It's like a weird inevitability, it seems like. Which is another discussion. Do we ban women from gyms? That's another. I don't think we can do.
Finally, you're speaking my language, finally something I can get behind.
Sorry, ladies. You're
all right. I'm in on
Get
American Jiu-Jitsu, man. Let's do it.
They only make up like 5% of the total member base. We can afford to lose them.
Women and children.
Yeah, women and children. You're out. That's how it used to be. But yeah, there's a lot of little problems like that. So I would say that's the cultural aspect, and like that's quite a litany of differences from Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And so I'm working on phrasing and like sloganizing a way to compress all of that into like an understandable phrase, and it's just incredibly difficult to do, and I haven't been successful with it, with like making it just easy to digest for someone who's just gotten into it, because all those things I just described you only experience after you've been in it for years, or you kind of like start to understand what's going on. So it's an uphill challenge. The technical side, I think, is a lot more obvious, and so I lean towards describing this to people more. It's which would be, there was martial arts has been, in grappling in particular, has worked its way around the globe many times, over thousands of years, from Romans wrestling to the Sinhalese in Africa wrestling to the Celts doing wrestling, like it's everywhere. It's literally ubiquitous. The idea that it has somehow seeded and originated only in Brazil only represents a thread of modern grappling that was popularized through MMA and the UFC and all these things. And that is a fair point, that there was a popularization effort done through Brazil and the Gracie family. However, there's a lot of other grappling arts that are very similar and adjacent to the Brazilian style, like Sambo, American wrestling, the dying but not dead art of catch wrestling, pro wrestling. Like there's all these other cultural components that could be ascribed more to like the Americanized version. And then there's techniques that are purely American. For instance, the Americana. Why did they call it the Americana? It came from America. It was a technique they did not use. The American wrestlers were using it. The catch wrestlers were using it in their catch matches against the Brazilians and the Japanese, which were prevalent throughout history. And it was given an American name. It's the American. So there's acknowledgement even from the Brazilians to the innovation and contribution of American grapplers. The leg lock game in more modern history, the leg lock, Dean Lister was kind of one of the driving forces of leg locks in the last 20 years. Danaher, obviously, Gordon and his whole crew. And now you can easily say that the North American leg lock game is the leading driver of grappling today, right? Like the entire no-gi scene is like derivative from the Americans figuring out leg locks when the Brazilians didn't want to do them, and there was a taboo there to even do them, to even participate. So there's that side, which is like Americans have made contributions, and I don't think it should sit right with any American that if an American makes a contribution, it gets enveloped by the name Brazilian. Like just because we compete against them or even compete in a lot of their tournaments, and when we do our own techniques, that doesn't mean that they're now Brazilian techniques. Those are American techniques, and the people who originated them need to claim them and not just let them be absorbed into the giant hegemony of Brazilian jiu-jitsu. There has to be a differentiation, otherwise they get all the credit, and it's literally just an injustice. So that's the more easily conveyable message. And then the simplest message of why there needs to be an American Jiu-Jitsu and why there's a differentiation is every other sport in the world has a national like sovereignty to it. So there's USA Olympic team. In every sport, you have the USA team, and then you have the Polish team, and the like all the different teams, the Brazilian team, and they wear the name on their uniform for a reason. How does it make sense for an American to represent Brazilian jiu-jitsu? Like obviously they should be representing American jiu-jitsu. You're not going to be an American Brazilian jiu-jitsu competitor. It's like a contradiction. Would you agree?
So one of my guys, he just got promoted to black belt. He's master one. He's doing this tournament, and he's like, yeah, it's crazy. There's 9 of us. And he's like, I'm one of 3 Americans in the division. And I go, really? One of 3 Americans? What teams are they on? And he's like, oh, Gracie, Baja, and Alliance. And I go, oh, you're one of 1 Americans in the division. And he laughed, and he's like, what do you mean? I'm like, well, I mean, we're the only guys representing an American team, and it was just that on that same idea is there needs to be some nationalism. There needs to be some pride and I don't know if this is where some of your viewpoint comes from, but you get treated a certain way as a competitor if you're American versus if you're Brazilian, and you experience certain things in a certain way, and it not that it causes you to be racist or something crazy like that, but it does just cause you to go, okay, well, they're taking pride in themselves, and I should be allowed to do the same.
Yeah, and let's just look at the realism is that there is always going to be in-group preference with any group. If you speak the same language as that group, you're going to have preferential treatment within that group, just on a language basis alone, or like a name basis. Like there's the meme that goes around of like, if you just change your name to Paulo Costa on the sign up sheet, but you look like a white American guy, like you're still going to get the 2 points because there's plenty of Caucasian Brazilians, through the Germanic Germans going over there. So all you got to do is just change the name and you get the preferential treatment. So like that's a total reality. And it's absolutely disingenuous to call that racism, to notice in-group preference and preferential treatment. And that preferential treatment extends far beyond the tournaments that have only Brazilian refs, but also into the gyms that have a high Brazilian population. That there's like cliques that form based on the language, and so the Brazilians will kind of congregate and speak in Portuguese about how to beat the Americans. And so I experienced that a lot at Autos, where it's like, are we really on the same team, or are you guys like talking over there about how to beat me and not telling me, like not giving me the feedback? Like I could use that feedback too, So, and then it's like at the bigger teams, you got to compete against your own teammates. And if there's they're Brazilian and I'm claiming American, it's like, are we really even on the same team here? And that was a big cause of the rift between me and the Brazilian team I was on. So yeah, it's like totally real. And I think it's just important for people to not just yield to another culture.
Mm-hmm.
Like I used this term recently on my last podcast. I called it reverse assimilation. It's like, are we just going to completely reverse assimilate? We're all just Brazilians now. Like, maybe that's contentious to say, and maybe that upsets some people. But like at the end of the day, can we plant our own flag in our own soil, please? Like, can we? We're not saying go back to Brazil. We're just saying, can we represent our own country in our own country? Yes.
And it doesn't need to be an offensive thing. It doesn't need to be a, to get back at some you thing, but I typically just call jujitsu, right? And that's typically my terminology in what we do at our gym, because to say it's Brazilian jiu-jitsu, I learned it from an American who learned it from an American. And then there was a language, transition between there. And it's like, how can I really say that? In so much of the jiu-jitsu that I learned was affected by the culture of wrestling where we were at and stuff. So
And so I'm gonna push back on you here a little bit. I think that that's a cop out to say, oh, it's all just jujitsu.
let me hear.
Everyone else, that's the number one argument I get is when I say AJJ, they say no, it's just jujitsu, but that's not true. Almost everyone calls it Brazilian jiu-jitsu. There is no middle. Like you can reference jiu-jitsu in its abstraction, like you're doing, which is like jiu-jitsu is jiu-jitsu. But you said yourself, I learned it from Americans. There's American lineage, to use that term. There's American lineage in your jiu-jitsu. So why are you disregarding the American lineage in your own jiu-jitsu learning journey? Why don't you give them the same respect that everyone gives to the Brazilian lineage? Why do you feel it's necessary to abbreviate it as a sort of consolation? Let's just all call it jiu-jitsu.
That's a great question. Nobody's ever asked me.
Something to think about, because I do think that there, at a certain point, if what we're talking about is true, which I believe it to be, we have to plant the flag. We have to stand for something. If you stand for nothing, you stand for nothing. To stand for something is the true act of bravery. And it's the tipping point will be reached if enough people just stand and plant the flag. It's like, if I'm the only guy that's willing to say it's AJJ, it's American Jiu-Jitsu, then it's going to be tough. But it doesn't take that many people to just also stand there in unity, arm in arm, to say we are Americans and we do American Jiu-Jitsu. And maybe it's a little early. Maybe it's still early for that. But eventually it has to happen. Otherwise, we just continue down this road, which isn't the worst thing. Like it's like not the worst thing, But I think that there's merit to the idea of American Jiu-Jitsu. There's a historical thread. There's an obvious social and cultural difference. And there's also a benefit to it. And the benefit is we're all offering a clear alternative, which allows the American consumer to make a decision that's best for themselves. Because there's a lot of people, like I said, it's like, maybe you should go to the Brazilian gym if you're looking for that traditional Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu experience and you want to kind of understand the Gracie pattern and all those things. That's fine, and that exists. But then for all the people that they don't fit into that environment, and maybe they don't feel comfortable having to ask to go to the bathroom, there's American Jiu-Jitsu. And hey, you just happen to be American also. So you're welcome with open arms. And we're all speaking English here. And you can understand the coach very clearly because they speak your language. And Brazilians are welcome too. The Brazilians are totally welcome in America, clearly. And Brazilians can become Americans. That's the beauty of America, is like, if you really like it and you really like the structure and the ideas of individualism, you can become it, and you can become a true American regardless of your national birthplace. However, if we concede and say, oh yeah, we're not going to put American on anything, we're basically conceding the individualism, and we're saying, no, actually, we want to import Brazil culture. We want to import other culture. And that fundamentally erodes the American culture that makes America great.
Man,
What do you think?
that was a really good argument. I am gonna have to. I've got things to think about on that one. I don't think that, and I understand what you mean when you say you can't be the only one doing it. You can't be the only guy. But yeah, I guess also on the other note is I don't know. I think So I have followed your jiu-jitsu career since you were purple belt. Anyone who is competing in IBJJF a lot, I think, started following your jiu-jitsu career when you were purple belt. And one thing about your jiu-jitsu, I don't think I play any Keenan Cornelius jiu-jitsu, but one thing that I do know, like for sure, is if you hadn't been so willing to speak out and be an anti-steroid guy, that I'm not saying like I was even on the fence about it, but that gave me so much confidence to go, you know what? If this guy is willing to do it, I'll do that too. And yeah, I just always, as you were saying that and kind of talking about that. And so that's just been something really cool to see from you is your ability to be that guy and to say, okay, this is where I stand. And
Yeah, I'll take the heat. I'll take the heat all day if it gives anyone else the courage to just stand with me on it, because it's like there really is no real downside to standing up for your beliefs if you believe them to be true. And like, it really is like steroids, and that's a very easy position to take. It's like the moral high ground. There's actually a lot of anti-steroid sentiment in the American culture. America has really been against steroids for a long time. Brazil is the opposite. It's just like there's not even prescriptions needed. Walk into any pharmacy, you can just get it. In a lot of countries, it's like that. So that's actually a unique American thing too, which is like we want a fair playing field. And if the playing field isn't fair, that's not sportsmanlike. So that's like a fundamental American idea, is like sportsmanship, which is a form of honor, right? It's like a form. We are honorable. We're not trying to get a cheap edge. We're not trying to win through any subterfuge or espionage or anything that's like cloak and dagger, underhanded. You don't know my secret advantage I have. It's like we want to know truthfully in a fair fight the real result. And if you have steroids and other things entering into that, it destroys the whole idea of that. It destroys the honor. Now, steroids in jiu-jitsu, like, because there's not testing, it's going to be, it's going to be everywhere. And truthfully, I don't think steroids really help that much. I don't think they help people that much. I've beaten plenty of guys who are like juiced up on steroids, and I've trained with those same guys when they're not, and I've been beaten by them. Like, I really don't think it's even that helpful. I think it sure, it helps with muscle mass, but jiu-jitsu is not about muscle mass, and a lot of times it can hold you back. So I honestly didn't do steroids, not because I thought it was like the honorable thing to do, but I thought it was actually a sign of weakness. Because if you believe that you need chemical enhancement just to participate in a sport where most of the people are not on it, aren't you just like admitting that you're basically just telling yourself that you're not good enough? And now, like, as a subconscious fundamental value, you've decided that like I actually am not good enough as my normal self to participate in this. And so you've sacrificed potentially aspects of your health. Although I really think there's not that many downsides. The main one I see is people losing their hair. You and I both have our heads of hair. I bet you wouldn't trade that for any world gold medal, would you? If you had
probably not. When I see how little they directly change your life, I think I would take my hair.
Yeah, keep the hair, man. It goes a lot farther than a world gold medal. I don't even have a world gold medal in the gi, and I treat it as if I do. Like, it literally, no one even knows the difference. So it's like it means almost nothing. It's more about how you do it than like the result. So yeah, I'd like to each their own. I think in high level competition, it should be fair. It should either be like this is a steroid allowed competition, and you're or not. I think from like a spectator standpoint, you'll have a lot more exciting. Maybe you will. I don't know. In jiu-jitsu alone, maybe not. In MMA, sure. It's like give them weapons while you're at it. If you want more excitement, give them blades. Like, you want to see blood, there will be blood. Like, we can go all the way back to the Coliseum if we want this, because it's like that's that road. And like,
and there are people willing to do it.
they're willing to die. They literally are willing to die for glory. And it's like, you're not going to take that out of men. That's in there probably for a long time. So in a way, it's like, go for it. And we're seeing that with like bare knuckle boxing and car jitsu and power slap. It's like, we're going down that road anyways. So like, I don't think that it should be like viewed as like this taboo thing. Like, oh, you do steroids, that's so evil of you. It's like, no, I don't really worry about it like that. But I do think there is something to say about the honor aspect and the fair fight aspect. And it's like, you shouldn't conceal it if you are doing it. And there should be tournaments where it's allowed. Like ADCC, it's like an unspoken rule that it's like, hey guys, they kind of want you to be on steroids at ADCC, right?
Yeah,
like
for the bodybuilding competition right after,
or during. It's like half the show is like, look at the size of that guy. He's huge. Look at these monstrous freaks.
They
like
made 140 pounds,
Yeah. These guys they can be huge, and it's definitely a spectacle. But like this, I think Craig Jones showed that the spectacle is not just the physiques of these guys, right? It's like it's how you walk the walk. It's like it's your swag. And CJI was a good example of like fantastic promotion, thoughtful structure, innovative environmental design with the slope mats.
Oh, the slope mats, man.
Yeah, it's like everything but steroids is like the contributing factor of CJI's success over ADCC this year. So yeah, it's kind of like it's honestly, I think it's a non-issue. But I do think that the power of speaking against steroids is just what you said. It just gives people the confidence to not do it. Because like if you're on the fence, it's a hard thing, and you need a good reason not to do it. If you really want to win and you're a young guy, and it's like, it's especially attractive to young guys because they don't have the muscle mass of being an adult man yet. Like you're basically every day you're going in there reminded that you're a frail weakling compared to like the people with man strength or the guys who are on steroids. It's like, you're always going to be weaker than them. It's not like, what is this? The study about steroids is like, if you have a group that does steroids, a group that doesn't do steroids, and that group lifts weights, and then you have a group that does steroids and doesn't do steroids, and they don't lift weights. The guys that do steroids and don't lift will have more muscle mass than the guys who don't do steroids and do lift.
Yes.
So like, that's a big thing. Like that's a very true, like that shit works. It's not a placebo. Like you're going to be stronger if you get on it. So why not? Like, it's only for your own psychology of like being like, no, you are good enough, and you should find your limits before you start trying to artificially enhance yourself. At least hit your limit. Like really push yourself, and so you can be confident that you've tried your damnedest. And then if you still need something else, to get the results you want, it's like, okay, it's your own body. At least you gave it an honest shot.
I completely agree. Keenan, I have already taken too much of your time. Can I just ask you one more question?
Yes, please.
So, what is the deal with the Dojo Storm podcast? What's up with it? What's the reason behind it? In prep, I listened to you talking to Craig Jones, and there was a point that you even asked him, and you kind of hinted to, podcast, huh? And I wasn't sure if that had anything to do with it, but was there any point for you with, or what was your kind of decision for starting a podcast?
Well, I did 50 episodes of my previous podcast, and I guess the average, I think like the average amount of episodes that anyone does on a like when people start their podcasts, they pretty much all flunk out before episode 20. Most people give up. So I gave it a really honest shot and really like worked hard at it. And I really enjoyed the podcast, honestly, and I got a lot of good feedback. And it's nice to hear that people actually want to listen to what you say, even if it's just a small amount of people in a small niche. But really, it was my split from Autos and like Josh not really coming to Legion as much. And it's like, we're trying to make this thing work, but it's like, we're not in the same environment and the same team anymore. And I didn't want to do like a solo podcast. And I was moving away from solo content. And I kind of like just doing like just talking.
Mm-hmm.
So it kind of got shut down because of that. It was just difficult to make it work. Um, so I gave up on podcasting for many years, and then I did that podcast with Craig. It went super well, and it was like his best podcast, like
Mm-hmm.
or most viewed podcast. Like we did better numbers than Alex Jones, which I would have never thought. Because like, why do people even care what I have to say anymore if I'm not winning competitions? So that was inspiring to a degree. And a lot of people said I held my ground with Craig on a comedy standpoint. That felt good because Craig is super funny. I don't really think of myself as a super funny guy, but it was nice to be able to get in there and trade jokes a little bit and weather the storm. Um, and so I guess, oh yeah, and then like when you're running a business, well, for me at least, and it sounds like you're pretty well read. Like I read a lot, I study a lot. I'm a big internet user of like educational information. My business partner Miha, co-founder, was a big influence on me moving away from like entertainment content to like consuming educational content as just like a primary form of entertainment. Just like
Mm-hmm.
change how you're entertained. Be entertained by things that are useful than things that are time wasters. So that was big for me. So it's like I have all these thoughts and ideas synthesizing in my mind, and they were just going left unsaid. And I felt like I had more to say, and I just wanted to say it. If I don't ever say it, we would have never met. We would have
Yeah.
never had this opportunity. So it's like it's so obvious that if you just put anything out into the world, you get stuff back. You get like opportunities appear, people appear. Like Nate Diaz and Jake Shields immediately hit us up to do a seminar after I posted one podcast. It's like Nate Diaz and Jake Shields are coming down. Um, so the results are obvious, and I knew that those existed, but I was also a little bit shy. I would say about like I was shy about putting your thoughts out there because I'm really not good at like censoring myself.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be in the modern world. It's like self-censorship is like the way that people are censored in a lot of ways. It's like people's thoughts and ideas are controlled through taboo in a lot of ways. And I think some of that is artificial psyops and all that shit. Um, so yeah, I just felt like I needed to say it. And if I don't, it would be something I regret like later in life. Like, just like, why didn't you just talk? Like, it's not that big of a deal. Just get on there and do it. And then everyone around me wanted to do podcasts, but none of them really had like, it's kind of like me with the American flag. Like, I'll just fucking be the guy to do it. And you guys can come. Like, after I like take my machete and chop down a path, like we can all go. So
Uh-huh.
I like being that guy. That's why I chose to do a network. So the opportunity is there. If anyone else wants to come be a part of it, like you can use our setup similar to like our open mat philosophy. It's like, we're just here. Like, you come use the mats. If you want to participate, come participate. Same with the J-Flow class. It's like free training for pros. Any pros that want to come learn from one of the best grapplers, takedown artists in the world. We're lucky to have him, and it's free for any pros that want to come participate. So it's the same. It's just a recurring pattern of like how I do business and how I engage with people. So we're doing it with the podcast now. The podcast is definitely going to be entertainment more than like like jujitsu dense information.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost just like for fun. At the end of
Mm-hmm.
the day, it's just like for fun. And I'm really just like clip farming, because you can put all like a whole podcast into these AI tools that just give you clips now. And like, I want to take advantage of that because it's hard to have editors. And do you edit your own podcast, or do you have an editor?
So I don't do the clips. I have an editor that does all the clips, and we use an AI software too, to do it. But I still do edit the podcast. And I mean, I usually have someone in here live switching. And so the podcast typically just need commercials added to them. So like I do that. But yeah, it is that I think Media had a YouTube video where they talked about how every content creator will eventually have a video podcast because that's the best way to get consistent clips for short form content.
Yeah, and it's kind of the only way to be heard. And like long form is the answer to short form. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you have to have both, because there's two. This is actually the same in like I don't know how much you know about like sales copywriting, but when you're like writing a persuasive letter on a website to try and convince someone to join your gym or whatever you're trying to do. There's the people that will read the headline and they'll make the decision whether they participate or not after they read the headline. But then there's a large proportion of people that have to read everything that's available. They're readers, and they'll read everything you have to say, and they want to be persuaded by you, and they want to hear your full contextual world. And these are usually smarter people, right? They're people that are like, they maybe see a clip of you, but they're like, I know that what people are saying about him, those are the people who just read things at face value. I want the deeper knowledge. I want to know what's going on for real. So those people will seek out your podcasts. And like, I hope they do that with this podcast. I hope people that see me say some outrageous clip that's like out of context sounds outrageous. You come to the podcast and I make a very good argument of why American Jiu-Jitsu should be called American Jiu-Jitsu. And I hope that they convert. That's honestly my goal, is like, I want people to hear what I have to say, and the ones who want to listen, and I want to persuade them to try and, like, I don't know, that's my will. You know, I'm putting my will out into the world like everyone should be doing. And like on a like deeper, you know, more esoteric perspective, like with artificial intelligence and all of the data mining that they do to train these models. And, you know, I think everyone kind of knows in the back of their mind there's some looming future where there's a super intelligence that is like making decisions, important decisions, and to like what degree that affects our lives remains to be seen. But I do know 100% that I have affected those AI outputs already. It's like the new Google search. Like, you used to do SEO to like rank on Google.
Uh-huh.
Now you have to have higher volumes of transcripted words to train Google's AI.
Interesting.
So before I started talking about American Jiu-Jitsu again, when you asked AI about American Jiu-Jitsu, it had a very weak understanding of it. And in fact, it took the counterpoint argument of it's actually Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. But then by just putting out my own content, I did a podcast with, I forgot his name. If it's Chaffee or Chappie. He's got a judo YouTube channel. So I hit him up because he's like a judo historian, and I did a long podcast where I like prepared my notes and I prepared my Jiu-Jitsu American history, and I put it all on YouTube, and I tried to speak super clearly so that the AI would read the transcript and integrate it into its learning, and it 100% worked.
Oh my gosh.
Absolutely worked, because it was novel text. So by contributing novel text that it couldn't get anywhere else on the internet about a very novel subject, I basically programmed the AI to be pro-American Jiu-Jitsu.
That's
nuts, right?
That's the most American thing that I've ever heard on American Jiu-Jitsu. That's beautiful.
Yeah. So like, you actually have to participate in the digital cybersphere, even if you hate it.
Mm-hmm.
Or you will succumb to the will of everyone who does.
That is very true. Keenan,
it's like democracy, AI democracy. You have to like talk to it.
Keenan, thank you so much for being on the show, man. I know I've taken so much of your time. I don't want to push it any longer, but thank you so much. I really enjoyed this conversation. I have a lot to think about. I'm going to probably have to do the episode after yours on whether or not I'm converting to American Jiu-Jitsu, but I really appreciate it.
We have more fun. You should join. We have a lot of fun.
It seems like it. It seems like there's less rules.
Less rules, that's for sure. More room for innovation. But yeah, no, this was super fun. I'm glad we did it. I never accept podcast requests. Literally never. I don't do podcasts, but because I'm a fan of your show and I like the stuff you put out, and you're a smart guy. That's why I did this, even though I literally didn't have time today. I'm missing another meeting to talk to you, but it was worth it.
I really appreciate you. I was very shocked when I was like, I'm just gonna ask him today. And I sent the message when you were like, oh yeah, let's do it. So that was really cool. I really appreciate you giving your time, and I'm sorry for whatever business got ruined because you missed this meeting.
It's all right. I should be able to save it. I'll head over there and catch the end of it. So nice to meet you, Josh. That was fun. Maybe we'll do it again sometime in the future once you start representing America, as is your birthright.
All right. Sounds great, man.